It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Smooth and Savvy is joined by some of the hottest talent in the entertainment industry, from musicians to authors and all those in between. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here he is, Mr. Smooth and Savvy himself, Douglas Coleman.
Hello, howdy ho, hey. Welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show. It's me, Douglas Coleman. How are ya? We've got a real potpourri show for you today. First up is some music, and then we've got 2 interviews. I wanted to talk a little bit about the TV series Dark Shadows. I'm very excited to say that my second interview guest today on the show is Kathryn Leigh Scott, one of the stars of the show. The original Dark Shadows TV series ran from 1966 to 1971. The show kind of morphed into a couple of different time periods. It started out in present-day 1966, and then went back into the 1700s, and then into the 1800s. The show, for those of you who've never seen it, it's centered around the wealthy Collins family of Collinsport, Maine. And slowly as the show progresses, the ghosts start to appear, and then the vampire Barnabas Collins appears. There were some rather unique things about this show. One of the things that I was intrigued about while I've been watching it was that although the show was videotaped, they did it in a one-take format. You know, there's some spots where the actors obviously missed their lines, and in a couple of cases they referred to one of the characters by the wrong name. But they just left it in the show and just kept going. You know, similar to like live theater. If you mess your lines in a live theater show, you just cover and you keep going. I don't think you would ever see anything like that on TV today. You know, they would just re-edit, retake it. It was interesting to see that. If you're not busy for the next several months, I highly recommend picking up the DVD set of all 1,225 episodes on 131 discs. It's a big box. The episodes do go quick, though, as the commercials are all edited out, and they run about 20 minutes apiece. But be forewarned, many of the shows have cliffhanger endings, and once you get started, it's really difficult to stop. I'm up to episode 342, and will more than likely be at this all summer. I think if my calculations are correct, I should be finishing up the show around Labor Day. But a big thank you to Kathryn Leigh Scott for turning me on to this wonderful show. I am completely hooked on it now, and have been trying to watch, 5 or 6 episodes, 7 episodes a night, if I have some free time. Anyways, before we get to the interviews, we do have some music to play. These were various submissions that we received, different genres, but I think all very well-crafted songs. The first song up is by Elvin Cole, and it's called Don't Take It Away. The next song is by Ivar Sigurberson. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He's from Iceland. How You Made Them Feel. And the next 2 songs were written by Jennifer Adan, or Adan, A-D-A-N, and Steve Lester. The first one, Leave It to the Road, Steve Lester sings lead vocals. The second one, which was also written by Jennifer and Steve, is called Who Said, and is sung by Megan Moreau. So without further ado, the music is first, then a short commercial break, and then into the interviews.
Don't take it away, that's all I've got to say. Don't take it away, don't make me cry. Oh, Don't say goodbye. You won't see me cry if you say goodbye. My heart and soul will die, oh Lord. Don't take it away, that's all I've got to say. Don't take it away, don't make me cry. Oh, take it away, that's all I've got these days. Don't take it away, don't make me cry. Oh, whoa. Doesn't really matter what you say. It doesn't really matter what you do. If your presence make no sense and can't add value to my life, people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. How you made them feel. How you made them feel. Even in the silence, I can feel your touch. When your silence isn't golden, They both think we're crazy. Well, maybe they're right, but you and I know better that when we're together we both come alive. So let's burn this town and leave it all behind. Take my hand and baby, let's go. Where we're headed, nobody's gotta know. We'll follow the starlight into the sunrise, and where we end up, I don't know. We'll leave it to the road. We'll leave it to the road. Turn on the radio and rest your head on my shoulder. Though we ain't got money, it don't matter, honey. All we need is each other. I know when we're together, life is so much better and we'll be alright. So let's burn this town and leave it all behind. Take my hand and baby, let's go. Where we're headed, nobody's gotta know. We'll follow the starlight into the sunrise, and where we end up, I don't know. We'll leave it to the road. We'll leave it to the highways, leave it to the back roads, dirt roads, whatever we choose. Even if we end up nowhere, at least it's somewhere with you. So take my hand and baby, let's go. Where we're headed, nobody's gotta know. We'll follow the starlight into the sunrise, and where we end up, I don't know. We'll leave it to the road. We'll leave it to the road. We'll leave it to the road. We'll leave it to the road.
Well, I thought you disappeared. You should have known better than to show your face around here. Well, I was getting by on my own. Did you know you're trained to fight? And now my words are gonna break your bones. I've already talked to my heart and moved on. I know what you did was just doing me wrong. So baby, where were you? Those nights I was so alone, begging for you, baby. Those nights I hit the ground, 'cause you weren't there to save me. Now tell me, what makes you think you can show up now? Who said I want you back around? Who said? I want you back around. Who said? I want you. Well, I thought you lost my number in your cell. I guess the hole you left me for put your life through hell. Well, I've gotten used to those eyes, the ones that beg to take you back. You say you've changed, now that's a lie. You're calling right up to my door, expecting my respect, but baby, no more. So tell me, where were you? Those nights I was so alone, begging for you, baby. Those nights I hit the ground, 'cause you weren't there to save me. Now tell me, what makes you think you can show up now? Who said I want you back around? Who said? I've already talked to my heart and moved on. I know what you did was just doing me wrong, but no more, no more, no. Those nights I was so alone, begging for you, baby. Those nights I hit the ground, 'cause you weren't there to save me. Now tell me, what makes you think you can show up now? Who said I want you back around? Who said? I want you back around. Who said? I want you back around.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on The Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Acclaimed author of Garden, Jane Yates brings you the first book in a new trilogy, Octopus Pirate, a story of a foundling who has unusual talents, such as the ability to communicate with octopuses. As a baby, he was washed up on an island off the Scottish mainland. An eccentric former nun who lives alone with cats brings him up. He joins a circus and narrowly escapes plots against him, flees to Cornwall, builds a replica pirate ship that's also an airship to travel back in time to fight real pirates. Get your copy today from Amazon, only 99 cents.
My first guest is an Ivy League graduate of Brown University, where he earned a bachelor's degree in mathematics and French literature. Despite being diagnosed with bipolar disorder in 1989, he went on to become a world champion Olympic sailor, as well as racing navigator for Emirates Team New Zealand in 2007. He has written a book called Black Sails, White Rabbits. Cancer Was the Easy Part. Okay, please welcome Kevin Hall. Hi, Kevin. How are you?
Good morning. Great. Thanks. How are you today?
Thank you for being here. You do have the distinction of being the first guest from New Zealand on the show, so that's cool. Thank you for getting up so early. Your bio is incredible. It's got so much stuff on it that I didn't really know where to begin. I kind of first thought of Lance Armstrong, which you probably have gotten that comparison a couple of times. However, the one part that I do want to cover first, and then we'll get into your book and things. You talk about having bipolar disorder. Can you explain exactly what that is, in case some people don't know what it is?
Certainly. It's a form of mental illness. It's a diagnosis that comes with a lifetime of the requirement to be very vigilant about my moods. If I leave my brain alone to do what it wants, it either spins off into the universe and gets spun up and a little too excited about things, or I can get very depressed. So I take a little bit of medication to help me even out my moods.
Would it be like, I'm trying to think of what the medications for this, Xanax or...
Yeah, the one I'm on is called Depakote, but it's similar. You know, they used to call it manic depression, and I actually prefer to call it that. I think it gives people a little more insight than bipolar, and I don't mind. I think the stigma is eroding, so I don't mind calling it what it is. It's manic depression. I
mean, we've all been depressed. How is yours different from somebody else who wouldn't be necessarily bipolar?
That's a great question. It's a can of worms debate. I don't know if I want to touch it, but I guess those of us with mental illness might say it's a proper depression when you literally can't will yourself out of bed. You're that, and it's very hard to describe unless you've been there. But the system that normally says, "Come on, you can do it. Come on, get out of bed. You got to go do stuff." That system is just, it's not absent. It's completely broken, and you just have no hope that your brain's just not working, basically. And there's no way to bootstrap yourself out of it. And maybe that's the difference between a grieving process or a real, bummer week or month and a proper depression is with grieving, the part of you that says, "Ooh, this really, really sucks." But I have a little bit of control over my attitude about it still. That part's gone. The part that controls your attitude.
So similar to Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, who stayed in bed for 2 years. I think he was, diagnosed with some sort of manic depressive where he didn't move for 2 years.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the movie they made recently about him. One of the things I read is that they actually decided to tone down a lot of stuff because people just wouldn't have believed it. It would have made him too other and too alien for people to relate to as a character. But my understanding is that in his real life, he had challenges that were bigger than the ones we saw on screen.
Oh, you're talking about Love and Mercy. Yeah, I just watched that not too long ago. It was a great movie. I liked it.
Yeah, so did I.
Okay, so your book opening, you describe a Truman Show grip. Can it tell us what that is? Because I remember seeing the Truman Show. That was with Jim Carrey. But just briefly tell us the movie again in case people forgot about it.
Sure. So Jim Carrey's character's name is Truman Burbank, and he lives inside a big bubble in Burbank, which is the second largest man-made object on Earth and visible from space, they say. And there's a whole town built around him, and everybody is in on it except him. He doesn't realize he's the star of a worldwide television broadcast show. He thinks he's just living a normal life when in fact he's a character in somebody else's show. And he has a director that kind of manipulates the movements of other actors, and they try to get him to do product placements every once in a while. And eventually he gets wise to it and kind of breaks into the side of the building, and he's going to leave and find his own life.
So while you were at university, you had the feeling that you were in some kind of a movie throughout the whole time?
And not the whole time at university, but when I became psychotic, I thought there were cameras everywhere and that the people around me were all actors, improvs, who were being scripted to get me to do things. I finally went to Boston and properly lost my mind and got arrested. But yeah, I just thought there was a vast organization akin to maybe the FBI, and they all had cameras and microphones and little earpieces, and they were just telling me what to do.
So it kind of, the manic depressive went along with something that people might call paranoia, schizophrenia.
Absolutely.
Almost, yeah.
Yes. Just a very, once the brain gets too psychotic, the paranoia ends up being a symptom that most of us have in that state. And it's just, there's a fear of prosecution or persecution, and yeah, a lot of paranoia.
So the medication has helped you?
The medications helped me a lot. My first psychosis followed a very, very high fever, and it's unclear exactly which was the chicken and which was the egg. Maybe the beginning of the psychosis brought on the fever. Maybe the fever caused the psychosis. It doesn't really matter very much. What matters is that after that, I've needed some medication to maintain a stable disposition. What's interesting is maybe if I hadn't gone back to the stress of college and competing, maybe if I had taken a more holistic approach, I wouldn't need as much medication as I do. But the fact is, I need it.
Now, was this something that you grew up with as a child? Were there symptoms of it then, or did this just really come on in your young adult life?
I guess there weren't symptoms per se. There were maybe some indicators that pointed to it. I was a high achiever, and manic depression can kind of run in those circles a bit. And I also tended to stay up late sometimes and have a whole lot of energy. And the onset, statistically, I think is around age 18-ish, 18 to 25 or something. They're starting to diagnose it earlier in kids, and I don't actually know how I feel about that. But for me, it was a lifesaver to be properly diagnosed and realize I might have challenges to live with for a long time.
Now, on top of that, you were also diagnosed with cancer. When were you diagnosed with cancer?
I was diagnosed with cancer just about exactly a year after my first bipolar psychotic break. So
Wow.
I had a manic episode, and then a year later I got cancer. Yeah.
Now, this was testicular cancer, correct?
Yes. Yep. And this was before Livestrong, and there was still a lot of fear around cancer. I was terrified, and I felt very alone, and the support groups weren't there yet. And so it was all pretty new. On the other hand, I was really lucky to be cured with surgery really quickly with that cancer. So I had a surgery, I had the testicle removed, and it looked like I was all clear for a good 2 years.
And then it came back.
Well, technically it didn't come back. Technically I got a whole new one on the other side. So it doesn't jump from one side to the other. It didn't sit waiting, hiding, and then come back and get the other side. The other side just started over on its own.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, what is that? But that's what happened to me.
So did you have the surgery on the other side as well?
Yeah. Before the surgery on the other side, we all thought, the doctors thought, because my blood levels had gone up, that it had come back and that it was downstream and stuck in my blood filters, the lymph nodes. So we had all those removed. I got opened up from basically my sternum to my groin, big operation to take out all the lymph nodes, and those all came back benign. So we were really confused because that's where it should have been. And the reason they were benign is, of course, it was the other testicle, which showed up the next week.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I got to be really special. That's not how I wanted to be special, but I got to be very special that way.
So how long ago was that?
That was just 2 years after the first one. So now we're coming up on 25 years nearly.
And you're cancer-free?
Yeah, I have been since 1993.
Well, that's fabulous. Do you have to go in periodically and get checked to see if there's any more cancer around? I mean, do they do cancer screens a little more regularly with you?
Right. No, they don't anymore. The two big milestones are 2 years and 5 years. And the 2-year milestone I didn't quite clear. And so that's the second cancer. But when I cleared the 5-year milestone after that, then they consider you just all good and a normal person in that respect.
So the chances of anything coming back now would be?
Same as everybody else. I try to manage my stress and be careful with what I eat. And I still have fear that kicks in every once in a while that it will come back or I'll get a new one. But I think about it as little as I can.
Cancer is, it's a horrible disease. My father died of it. And It's something that they really haven't quite pinpointed what. I mean, there are certain things that do, like smoking, but there are so many kind of, this might. I think asbestos has been proven to cause cancer, being exposed to it, a lot of high levels of it. But then, there are people that have smoked their whole life that live to be 100 and never get cancer.
Right.
And then there's people that have never smoked that get lung cancer. So there still isn't a real definitive what causes cancer. They say obesity can cause cancer, eating too much red meat can cause cancer. It's just one of these things that I wish they would at least find. I know we'd like to find a cure for it, but at least pinpoint the causes. We haven't even gotten that far yet.
My personal opinion about my personal cancers was that was very stress related. I think there are actually statistics, although I haven't put my finger on them yet, that there are a lot more instances of cancer in the high stress people with mental illness. So like so many of the memoirs I've read with mental illness, it's almost an afterthought. They're like, oh yeah, and I got cancer. And I believe that the stress that the mind has can sort of precipitate through the body and not allow the body to keep its defenses up as well. So I really try to focus on my levels of stress and keep them down as best I can.
Well, it probably was similar for Lance Armstrong because he was certainly in a high-stress competitive environment with his bike racing.
Yeah.
Although it could have been just sitting on that seat for too long. I don't know.
Right.
You really don't know what would cause it. I know that now the technology for treatment has gotten a lot better than when my father got it. I mean, he got it and he passed away in the 80s. It's certainly just from then, I mean, the treatments that they have now are much, much better. So people are surviving at a greater rate.
Yeah, which is really great. And they'll keep getting better. And as people get more and more familiar with it and we rally around people who have it, the support, I think, also is a good way to help people. Just all the support around it means that people have a better chance of being healthy. I think there's a big mental component.
Well, I have to agree with you. I tend to think that the mind does control the body. Stress can cause a lot of things to a lot of people. For me, I've noticed that stress will put weight on for me.
Sure. Yeah.
Even if you don't eat, which is a strange thing because if I get in a stressed out situation, I don't eat any more or less than I normally do. But all of a sudden, I'll weigh myself and I'll be, geez, I'm up 3 pounds, what happened? And then
right, wow.
It's like the body is holding on for some reason when you get stressed, Okay, let's move on to your book. This is your first book. When did you write the book?
I wrote the book, the majority of it, I wrote about just over a year ago now. So January, February of 2015. Okay,
it's a great title. Black Sails, White Rabbits. Cancer was the easy part. This is a autobiographical book?
Yeah, it's a memoir or autobiography, and right or wrong, I didn't hold back. It's all in there.
So this is through your bipolar, through your cancer, through
my shame around it, through all my family's support, through my difficult relationship with my father and his view of my mental illness, through the challenges with the International Olympic Committee to get them to allow me to compete with testosterone. And it's a love story at the end of the day. My wife, Amanda, is just fantastic. We met in college and we're still together now.
Oh, that's great. What's the significance of the title?
Well, it started out as White Jackets, White Rabbits. white rabbits for Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and My Adventures, and white jackets for the doctors in their coats, and also a little bit of a Herman Melville nod. I'm a big Herman Melville fan. And it didn't quite work, especially not with the bipolar imagery. So the sails we use now most of them have a lot of carbon fiber in them, and that's black, of course. So somehow I just ended up with black sails, white rabbits after reading Tristan and Isolde, rereading that. So the black sails is also a little bit of Tristan and Isolde there. And the cancer was the easy part, was something I used to quip in a way, because just I was really fortunate with it, and it's not chronic once you're cured. It's horrible when you're in the middle of it, but if you become cured, which I guess I am, it's not with you anymore. It's a label, but that's all it is. Whereas the bipolar is always there. If I'm not vigilant about the bipolar, I end up in trouble. And I've actually gotten sick twice in the last 3 years. So the other thing that makes the bipolar a lot tougher than the cancer is the stigma. There's just still a tremendous amount of stigma and misunderstanding around mental illness. The tide's changing, but it's early days, I think.
Well, when you say stigma about mental illness, you mean that people just don't accept that it's actually an illness?
That's a good way to put it. Sure. Things get either swept under the rug, or there's blame, or there's the just basic, you're just not trying hard enough. Why don't you get yourself out of bed? Or why don't you, take all your meds and make sure that never happens? And boy, I can say for sure that if it were that easy, I would have done it already.
You said you had some difficulties with your father. Was he of that opinion that you were just weak-charactered, or you just didn't, like you said, you weren't trying hard enough? Was that sort of where he was at?
I think so. Putting myself a little bit in his shoes as a father now, I can understand that my antics and disruptions as a early 20-year-old in my early 20s were really hard for him. I mean, one time he had to drop everything and fly to Tokyo to rescue me, and that would have sucked. That would have really sucked. On the other hand, he didn't have to deal with it after about 22 years old. Amanda and I were strong as a couple, and it was just never on his desk anymore. But for him, I had a recent episode at a family reunion, and he chose to feel disrespected and just wondered why I wasn't doing a better job with it. He kind of thought by now I should be doing my best and not have any more problems.
Can you give us an example of what the episode is you're talking about?
Sure. So we were at a family reunion at Legoland a couple years ago now, at the end of 2013, and the cameras turned back on for me. I became psychotic. I thought I was back on the Truman Show set. The people around the amusement park were actors telling me what to do. My family was actors telling me things to provoke me and get me to say things. And I guess one thing I am proud of about that, if that's a reasonable thing to say about a psychotic episode, is I kept one foot in the family and reality side of the door, and I agreed to have an intervention. I kind of said, yeah, why don't we do this? Let's talk about it. And I wanted to go to the hospital, so we got me to the hospital, and I'm proud of that.
Well, that's interesting. I think with mental illness, you're right. It's something that is becoming more aware in society, or society is becoming more aware that there is an actual problem. I can remember my father dealing with alcoholism back in the early 70s, and they didn't have any sort of AA wasn't around. Betty Ford was a few years away. And people just treated him like, well, why don't you just stop drinking?
Yeah.
And it was never considered a disease or something that people needed help. And even the term alcoholic wasn't applied to him because he was a professional man. Sure. Alcoholism was something of the Skid Row bum laying in the gutter with a bottle and a bag. Right. It wasn't a white-collar professional who had a nice house in the suburbs and all that. Yeah, I think that as time marches on, we get a little bit more intelligent as a society. I hope.
I think we do. And to be fair to the people who don't know much about it, I mean, in a way, how would they? All they've seen is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and a few other movies where madness is, I don't know, sexy, if that's the right word. Like, it's very interesting, the whole madness thing. And it's just other enough that people want to look in from the outside like a car crash. And I don't want to be a car crash anymore. I want to be a person who's, just trying to get by like everybody else.
Well, it sounds like you have made incredible progress. it's nice to hear a happy story, if this can be called one, because you have come through what I think would have killed a lot of people. And you've come through and you sound good and you've written a book. I think inspiration for others would be a good way to describe you.
Well, that's the real honor, and it's something I'm getting more comfortable with the idea of. I know that a lot of it is down to some resilience on my part, but the rest of it is definitely down to support on my family. My mom and Amanda and my sister have just really always been there. And my dad's been there in the way he knows how. It just turns out his model of me still really kind of stings. So I'm sure we'll mend that with a little more time too.
Tell everybody your website.
Sure. My website's kevinahall.com. A for Alan, kevinahall.com.
Okay. And the book is called Black Sails, White Rabbits. Cancer Was the Easy Part. Is available on Amazon, I assume, and all the
Amazon. We've actually just done the audiobook. A professional New York actor has narrated the audiobook, and it's phenomenal. I'm so excited. I got to hear the story all again done his way. It's really great.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your incredible story with us.
Thanks for having me. It was great to be here.
And now...
Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
Again?
Button up my sleeve. Presto! No doubt about it. I gotta get another hat.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
She's an author, actress, and has written several books of fiction and nonfiction. She starred in the cult favorite Dark Shadows and has recently appeared in recurring roles on The Goldbergs. Her latest book, Last Dance at the Savoy, Life, Love, and Caring for Someone with Progressive Supranuclear Palsy, is a memoir about caregiving her husband, the late Jeff Miller, founder of Los Angeles Magazine. Okay, please welcome Kathryn Leigh Scott. Hi, Kathryn. How are you?
Hi, Douglas.
Nice to have you on the show. Thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I've been looking forward to it.
Now, where are you right now? Where is your home?
Right now, I am looking out of my garden in Beverly Hills.
Ah, nice home. Yeah.
Actually, I love this house. Lived here a very, very long time. And I love gardening. And it's just, you can't imagine. Everything is in bloom. It looks wonderful.
Well, it is late springtime, I guess. Although I've been to LA many times and I never seem to get any change of weather at all. If I go there in the middle of winter, in the middle of summer, in the spring, it's always 70 degrees and sunny.
Yep, exactly.
So, you can pretty much count on that. Yeah, it's probably one of the few places I've been with the most consistent weather in the world.
Yes. Well, San Diego is actually known for that. But here, I do feel a bit of, it's a desert climate. So I do feel a bit of a change with the season. So anyway, but I do love it here. But I also love New York. I mean, I went to school in New York. It's where I started my career. I love everything about the city. So I never make comparisons between the two. I never say that I prefer one over the other.
Well, they're totally different.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I'm from Minneapolis. I grew up on a farm in Robbinsdale, Minnesota. And I've always been a city gal. I just catapulted out of Robbinsdale and went to school in New York. And really, that's where I started doing Dark Shadows.
Where did you go to school in New York?
I graduated from the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and almost immediately got a job.
Well, that's funny because I went there too.
Oh, I was very, very lucky.
Yeah, I didn't finish though. I went there in 1982.
Oh gosh, all right. Well, I went there a good deal earlier because Dark Shadows was my very first job, and that ran on ABC from 1966 to 1971. Oh,
okay. So you're a couple of years older than me, maybe.
Oh, I think I'm a good deal older. But, the fact that we are celebrating our 50th anniversary of Dark Shadows, June 27th, it pretty much dates me, and I don't care.
Well, listen, you're only as old as you,
right.
Old as you feel?
I like to look at it this way. Think of the alternative.
Were you there at the same time that Robert Redford was there?
He gave the commencement address at my graduation.
Oh,
No,
okay.
he was already working on Broadway. He was doing Barefoot in the Park.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I went there for about 6 months, and then I really loved the school, but I was so keen on being a musician that I hooked up with a band and just left the school.
Well, that's another good career choice.
Because that really was why I went to New York in the first place. I got accepted to go to the school, and I thought, okay, well, this is a good, like, sort of foot in the door,
Yeah.
you know, but, well, anyways, so you were in Dark Shadows, and then, now this is, this was the original show that you were saying.
I was in the original television series created by Dan Curtis, and I played the fiancée of the vampire Barnabas Collins. That was Josette Dupre. And I was on the very first day playing Maggie Evans in the diner. I sort of welcomed Jonathan Frid, the vampire, to Collinsport.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to have to go. I think they're all on YouTube now, aren't they?
They are on YouTube.
Yeah.
They've been on Netflix. They have never been off the air. They always play somewhere. You can see them on Hula currently. And there is a DVD boxed set, all 1,225 episodes. So if you want to spend the next year watching reruns,
It could be a full-time job just watching all of those.
absolutely. But you would be amazed at the number of people that I wrote a book a couple of years ago about 5 decades of Dark Shadows. It's called Dark Shadows Return to Collinwood. And it's full of photographs and behind the scenes stories and a complete history. And also, I think this is why people really do want to buy it. It's an episode guide to all 1,225 episodes.
I was going to ask you, what did you think of the movie with Johnny Depp? Did you like it?
Laura Parker, David Selby, Jonathan Frid, and the four of us were played cameos. And actually, we were terribly pleased that they acknowledged, our involvement, the fact that we created those roles. But quite frankly, the film took a very different take than what we did. Granted, it was 47 years later, but we played the show straight. We played it, there were no camp elements whatsoever, although the very premise of the show was, sort of campy, but you can't play that. So our two films and our television series were very, very different from what Tim Burton and Johnny Depp wanted to do. And they were great fans of the show.
Now, you said you had a cameo in the movie?
I did, and we were in the party scene. Johnny Depp welcomed us to Collinwood, and I said, thank you for having us, which was sort of a double entendre because indeed I just wanted him to know and everybody to know that we were glad to be there.
Oh, that's funny. I'll have to go back and look, because I think I have that movie. I did enjoy that. I like the sort of 70s retro feel of it.
Yeah.
That was a nice part about it, especially the music.
Yeah.
I happen to be a big fan of 70s music, so.
Well, I'll tell you the really wonderful thing about our show. We had Bob Cobert, who is an absolutely wonderful musician, and he composed the music. And a lot of the music was actually, Quentin's theme, for example, Josette's theme. They were on the hit parade.
All right.
Do you remember the hit parade? There was such a thing,
Well, I wasn't around, but I do.
I mean, it was huge. They were way up on the Billboard charts.
I think that was, when was the hit parade? Was that in the?
Oh my God, that was 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s.
Right. Okay.
But the term hit parade is just kind of generic. But anyway, Bob Cobert wrote wonderful music.
I think hit parade became Billboard at some point.
That probably did at some point.
I wanted to ask you about, and I had to pronounce this a couple of times. It's called Progressive Super.
Douglas, let me tell you, I wrote a book, a memoir, and it just came out a couple of weeks ago. It's called Last Dance at the Savoy, Life, Love, and Caring for Someone with Progressive Supranuclear Palsy. And the someone in the title was my husband, Jeff Miller, who was the founding editor of Los Angeles Magazine. And he contracted this, or he was diagnosed with this prime of life disease. And there are 5 of these diseases. And one of them, Lewy body, is the one that Robin Williams was diagnosed with.
Oh.
And another one of them is ALS, which everyone knows as Lou Gehrig disease. And then there are 3 others. One of them is progressive supranuclear palsy, multiple systems atrophy, and corticobasal degeneration. But they are all brain diseases. They are all movement disorder diseases. They each have their own characteristics, but they're all progressive. In my husband's case, he lived 4 years after diagnosis. And the reason why I wrote the book is that one of Jeff's early doctors suggested that I keep a journal because the disease is progressive. And he said, you might want to keep track of the medications and see what works and what doesn't, because there is really no medication or treatment protocol. And that journal that I kept on my desktop, that formed the template for the book that I wrote, because when Jeff was diagnosed, I had nowhere to turn. And I really feel that people learn the most from somebody who is sharing their experience, somebody who is already facing the challenges, the day-to-day challenges of these diseases.
What were some of the early signs that you said here that you missed?
Oh, I missed, one of the problems with all of these prime of life diseases is that the symptoms come and go. And some of them, because usually it happens in their 50s or 60s, so, you put it down to just, getting older. For example, my husband kept falling backward, and we blamed it on a crack in the sidewalk, a wobbly chair, a slippery surface. You keep finding excuses for these things. He also, there were difficulties using 2 hands at the same time. But you keep finding excuses for these things until the symptoms become so pronounced, and that's when we went to see a neurologist. There's another hallmark to this disease, and that is an inability to shift the eyes up and down. And I didn't realize that my husband was having difficulty opening envelopes, for example. And I, in this age of computers and so on, I wasn't aware that his handwriting was diminishing. So there are many of these things that only become evident when they become more severe.
What kind of medication is available for this?
People live for decades with Parkinson's disease, and very often these diseases are referred to as Parkinson's plus. Sinemet, which is carbidopa-levodopa, is usually prescribed, and it's very, very helpful. Occasionally, somebody with PSP finds benefit in taking Sinemet, but my husband was taking medications for all sorts of things that he didn't have because doctors prescribe things off-label on the chance that there is some ingredient that will be of benefit. For example, he was taking medication for restless leg syndrome, Alzheimer's, like Exelon patch or Aricept. Anyway, for all, and of course, Sinemet. All kinds of medications for diseases that he didn't have. But occasionally, one of these medications would work for a little while.
It says that you're a national volunteer spokesperson for the cure of PSP.
I am. And Patricia Richardson, and you may remember her from Home Improvement, is the national spokesperson. Her father passed away from progressive supranuclear palsy. And I've been sort of speaking on behalf of Cure PSP for the last year, mainly because I wanted to just sort of pay it forward. There were so many people in these support groups who were helpful to me. And there is tremendous research that is benefiting not only people who have PSP, but also research that is really informing, a cure for Alzheimer's and various other diseases. eventually a cure will be found, I think, and certainly a treatment protocol. I've been enjoying this because I'm meeting so many people, and the real thing, Douglas, is that any of these movement disorder diseases, these progressive brain diseases, are very isolating, and people lose. They lose their ability to communicate. In the end, my husband was not able to speak, and it's isolating. And this is another way through these support groups, that people meet other people who are going through what they're going through.
This was one that I've actually never heard of before this interview.
No, I have never heard of it either. And I have to say, and I talk about this in the book, and quite frankly, Last Dance at the Savoy is as much about life and love as it is caregiving, because there are so many emotional things that one does go through. And when I attended my first support group meeting, and a doctor urged me to go to find out everything that I could about it. And there were so many people there who were in a more advanced state than my husband, but I could see what our future was. And it was a harrowing experience. But again, the people that I did meet there were very understanding. They reached out. And I don't know that I would have got through it without having that support. So
the book Last Dance at the Savoy is this an autobiographical, or is it just specifically dealing with?
It's very much a memoir. It is very much a memoir. Okay. And I talk about, well, because there was I set the context, of course. So, everything that we were doing in our lives. And I think one of the secrets to really finding fulfillment in every precious moment that you have is to keep things as normal as possible. And each new normal that comes along, you just learn how to adapt to it. You install the handicap equipment that's going to provide safety and comfort. But it really is very much a memoir. I certainly talk about our life together. And I also included a resource guide at the end because there were so many things that I learned during my husband's illness that I really wanted to pass along.
How long was the illness from the diagnosis till his passing?
It was almost exactly 4 years. And they generally say that the life expectancy is 4 to 7 years. In fact, my husband had a pure case of PSP. I mean, sometimes people have, because they have a number of maybe different kinds of conditions. Sometimes there's an overlap between PSP and CBD or MSA. In my husband's case, it was just a pure case of progressive supranuclear palsy.
How did they diagnose it?
Well, in the end, it was. We went to the Mayo Clinic and Columbia Presbyterian. We went to UCLA. In the end, it was a doctor at UCLA that sent us to an ophthalmologist. And it was really the inability to shift the gaze up and down that determined that it was actually PSP and not one of the other prime of life diseases. So in the end, that was the diagnosis.
It's interesting to me that it seems like as we progress as a society, we're coming up with cures for this and that, but we're also creating new diseases.
Well, I think we're finding out about
yeah.
I think that I would suggest that these prime of life diseases have been around a long time, but since they don't necessarily strike until late 50s or early 60s, as the lifespan, gets longer, more of these diseases are going to show up. I would suspect that there were people diagnosed with Parkinson's disease or maybe dementia or something, hardening of the arteries. Remember when people used to say they had hardening of the arteries? Right. I think that some of these people had undetected, brain diseases, like one of these.
Or they just said, "Oh, well, they're just getting old. They're getting senile. They're getting,
That's right, senile, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, because my husband did not have dementia, he was clear to the end. But, there's always going to be, because it is a brain disease and you're taking medications also that contribute to memory problems and so on. So, yeah, I have a feeling that we're just awakening to these diseases that hit a little bit later in life.
Well, it sounds like a very interesting book. I think people should go out and get it.
Thank you, Douglas. You can either, if you want a signed copy, you can go to my website, www.kathrynleescott.com, or you can go on Amazon.com. I realized when I was writing the book that people who are in a caregiving situation, and by the way, this is about caregiving in general, not just taking care of somebody with PSP, but I realized that people in a caregiving situation wouldn't be browsing bookstores. So the book is available on Amazon in print, but also audio. I read the book, and it's available as an ebook. So you can read it on whatever device, a Kindle or whatever that you use.
Well, that's interesting.
It's available. So I hope people will buy it, and not just for the caregiving, but also it's I think I have nothing but 5-star reviews for the book, so it's getting a very, very good reception.
It's interesting that you read your own book, too, because that's not that common with authors. You know, they're great writers, but they don't want to be using their own voice to do the audiobook.
No, and because I am an actor and I do a lot of voiceovers, it was only natural that I should read it. But I have to say, it was emotional. It really was, maybe even more than writing the book, because it was all there day after day, and each progression. And I would read about something that I remembered so well. So it was a bit of an emotional charge as well. But I am a writer. In addition to being an actor, I've always been a writer. I write nonfiction, but I also write mystery novels and all sorts of things. So trying my hand at memoir was very, very interesting.
Well, the book is called Last Dance at the Savoy, Life, Love, and Caring for Someone with PSP. The author's name is Kathryn Leigh Scott. Kathryn, we are out of time, unfortunately, but thank you so much for coming on. This was a real treat to talk to you. And I am going to look at those Dark Shadow episodes again.
Please do. Please do. Anyway, it's marvelous talking to you, and thank you so much for having me on.
Well, that's about all the time we've got for the show today. I want to thank my special guests, Kevin Hall and Kathryn Leigh Scott. Also to all the music submissions, this is Douglas Coleman saying goodbye.